Welcome, Madridistas. How are you? Let me clarify something right away, since everything seems to need explanation. We're showing the statements from this man, a candidate for the presidency of Real Madrid, because he's the one who's speaking. When Florentino speaks, we'll show what Florentino says. Evidentemente, obviously, if someone doesn't show one of the two candidates speaking on the day he does and saying interesting things or making announcements directed at the members, then they're hiding information from you. Here, we're not going to say something like, I'm not showing this gentleman because I don't like him or for some random reason. No, today Riquelme spoke, so we show him. When Florentino speaks or when both of them speak, we'll show both of them. We're in an election campaign, and of course it's important for Real Madrid, even though we think we know that this gentleman has a very hard time beating Florentino Perez. Even if Florentino Perez goes through the whole campaign without saying anything, because he can afford to do that, right? He can go through the whole campaign without saying a word and still end up winning the election. Enrique Herme, as he should, talks a lot and tries to make himself known in the little time he has. Well, as we saw in the previous video, of course, now he speaks and everyone shows up, right? The other day, for Marca. Today, when opening the headquarters in front of the Bernabeu with that press scrum from the media. This afternoon, an interview in ABC, and you can already see him being a bit more aggressive, in parentheses. He has to be, because if not, he won't get anywhere. Close parentheses. And you can already see him making some announcements without names yet, and leaving us wondering what's going to happen on Wednesday with a event where he's going to announce something he has called a transformative plan for the members. He needs to address the members a lot because in the end, they're the ones who may or may not vote for him. It's the electoral role for this campaign. And now I'll tell you something about that transformative plan because I already know, they've told me something, but I can't tell you. But let's say, well, I'll tell you later. Let's start with the most important thing, which is what he has already said and announced today, which is no small thing. In a proper election campaign, of course, you have to excite people with names, but you shouldn't make the irresponsible mistake that Laporta did back in the day by announcing Beckham when he didn't have Beckham. Of course, it's a very fine line, and the one who did that best at the time, without a doubt, was Florentino Perez. Then in the next video that will come out, we talk about it there with Quique Recio. He defined it. What Florentino did with Figo was what made him win the elections, of course. And also, well, the fact that he had lost the previous ones had already made him known at Real Madrid. We already knew who Florentino Perez was. And in this case, this man starts at a big disadvantage there. And I think he's running to lose these elections and maybe to win the next ones, or at least to have more options in the next ones. But anyway, the master of saying, I've got this guy, was Florentino, among other things, because he said, if this guy doesn't come, I'll pay for your season tickets. People said, I remember voting for Florentino because of that. I voted for Florentino because of that in 2000. Well, very interesting things. Let's see what he said in this brief video excerpt from the interview in ABC, and now we'll read some of the headlines.
There are already deals wrapped up.
Which signings?
Wait, I'm not sure. It was quiet. I want it heard clearly.
There are deals already done.
Which signings?
We'll focus on the social side between now and Wednesday first. We'll make the announcement and focus on this until Wednesday. Then we'll start on the sporting side. You have two big international stars signed for Real Madrid.
Players or also coaches?
Two players, and we're working on the coaching side.
When you say signed, do you mean a verbal agreement, a signature, or what exactly?
An agreement that if I am president of Real Madrid, there are two international stars who will play for Real Madrid, and they are necessary for the club's short, medium, and long-term sports project.
Are you going to announce them over the next few weeks, these 2 weeks? Or no?
Probably yes.
I mean, are you going to say names? How is that going to work? Let's see, when you say names, like when Florentino announced Figo, because it was also done in a very smart way. Florentino, he didn't say it, and José Ramón de la Morena said it because Florentino had already told him. And those who often say that there are media outlets against Florentino, of course there are. The first is Marca and Diario AS, and also El Confidencial. They go all out against Florentino. Florentino beat them in court. There are definitely media outlets against Florentino. But back in the day, some of them weren't. And back then, during that war between José Ramón de la Morena and José María García, Florentino chose his side. And Florentino also wanted to, because honestly, not understanding this means not understanding anything. That if there were troublesome people in the media, really, we weren't born yesterday. We aren't naive. We know what Florentino has done. He's also the best president in Real Madrid's history, and a guy who has been attacked from all sides as well. But Florentino has known how to defend himself, and sometimes he's defended himself with things that... Careful. Were some journalists troublesome? Well, Florentino didn't want them. That's what happened. Sorry, this has happened at Real Madrid, and it will be done by the powerful people who reach such an important position as the presidency of Real Madrid. This world is like that. This world is like that. It's very glamorous, it's very beautiful, but it also has its ugly sides and its dirty underbelly. All right, well, what Florentino did on that occasion was have someone else say it and then constantly play with Figo's name. He didn't deny it until the end. And there came a moment when he said yes. And the proof to know that he really signed, well, is that I'm going to pay the season tickets for the members, and Figo the day after they were re-elected as president of Real Madrid. If he doesn't come, I'll pay for the members' season tickets. People thought, wow, he's serious. And I was one of them. As I said, well, Enrique Riquelme is going to have to do something similar if, on top of that, he says, although he's saying that probably the names, he's going to have to say them. I insist, how does this work? When he says them, they'll go and ask those specific people, those players or the clubs. The clubs could just dig in their heels, right? But you say he has a contract with us and so on. But if the player doesn't deny it, there might be some truth to it, a lot of truth to it. If the player or his agent denies it, they leave him exposed. That's why it's something they have to be very careful with, because it's very delicate, because that could ruin the whole campaign. Imagine if Haaland says, by the way, let's talk about Haaland. Imagine if Haaland says it. Tomorrow, Rafaela Pimenta might deny it, just like she did with Victor Font. And your whole election campaign falls apart. Be careful with that, because it's very complicated in Haaland's case. Haaland had a declining release clause in his previous contract, but he renewed. And right now, Haaland's clause, he doesn't have a clause. Unless, and we don't know, but we can guess, he has or would have a clause in case of departure if City are sanctioned. With the 130 violations of financial fair play, which remains to be seen. They could drop them to the second division, to the championship, we'll see. But maybe he has it, and maybe he's playing with that. But, well, I don't know. He talked about 2 footballers, 2 international stars. I've already heard people saying things out there. Well, anyway, I'll spare the adjectives. Some claim he doesn't want Spanish players and will sign 2 internationals. But saying he wants more Spanish players doesn't mean he opposes signing international stars. Honestly, there's a kind of black and white thinking in the selection campaign that's just amazing. Amazing. The thing is, this gentleman has to convince a lot of people and do it very quickly, and it's not easy at all. Let's take a look here at a summary of the things he said. We have 2 major international stars signed and will announce them. We've heard this before. Is it untrue that this candidacy is socialist and Pedro Sanchez is behind it? Be cautious. The full interview is on ABC, but I'll just share the highlights instead of reading it all. Sanchez Galan from Iberdrola, who is the father-in-law of the one who would go with him as his second, David Mesoneros. He says that Sanchez Galan is not involved in the project at all. He doesn't even like football, he says. Enrique Riquelme says there isn't any big shot in this candidacy. He's now speaking a bit more clearly. Of course, this is Florentino's staunch enemy. When Florentino tried to make a takeover bid for him, I think it was in 2008, and the other guy fought back. In the end, Florentino didn't succeed. He's the enemy. He's like Laporta right now, because there was a time when Florentino and Laporta were buddies, but now he's the Laporta of Florentino's business world, right? Not of Real Madrid. I've never been pro or anti-Mourinho. I've been a Madridista. And about this, I have something to say, because I have it written down here about what he said. Now, let's continue with the headlines, because talking about Mourinho, he said this. He says Mourinho is a great coach who achieved a lot of success and has a unique style of managing the locker room. So at some point, it can be good or not for a certain club. But in our case, I think Real Madrid needs a long-term project, not a short-term fix for the current situation, but to change to completely change direction with a medium and long-term project. I've already said that for me, Mourinho isn't exactly a quick fix. I wouldn't go as far as to call it that, but I do think that bringing in Mourinho is to solve something that's happening right now. This is just my opinion, as I've mentioned before. And I find it strange for Real Madrid. Madrid, or is it very telling of the moment we're living in that you have to sign Mourinho now, whose time has already passed in a way? Maybe I'll have to eat my words and next year we'll win the Champions League with Mourinho and you'll have to eat your words too. But isn't it strange to sign Mourinho again? Will he fix the locker room? Is he the best for that? For me, he is. But then what about the football? What do we do? So I can understand him. I don't quite agree with what he says, but I can understand him. He talks about his return. He says, if I were the president, we would evaluate it, but we're looking to create a long-term project. There will be time to talk about coaches later. I'm not pro-Mourinho or anti-Mourinho. I'm a Madridista, he says. Well, let's continue here with the headlines. Why? He talks about Klopp as well. He says, I love Klopp, but there are other coaches I like as well. I have a sporting director and I'll announce it in the next few days. That's also an important figure. If it's a former player, be careful, because I think there are many players who won't dare to take that step, even if they might support him, to be part of his campaign, mainly out of fear of being singled out. We're in the middle of a campaign and being singled out is terrible, but that's all I can say. He says hiring Xavi Alonso was right, but letting him go was a mistake. He needed authority in the locker room. I agree with that. I'm going to tell you some things I don't agree with him on before you guys get ahead of yourselves in the comments. And besides, I think I've shown over the last few days that there are quite a few things like not being clear about the Negreira issue or mixing up phrases that Florentino never said. He says Arbeloa was an experiment and Madrid can't afford experiments after 2 years without a project. About Tchouaméni and Valverde, he says the serious thing is not that a fight gets leaked, it's that the fight is seen as something normal. And I think here, man, he's absolutely right. We told Florentino after the press conference, since he was upset about the leak, just like Arbeloa says, no, man, the serious thing is that they've always fought in the locker room. Yeah, but this year we've had more than one fight. And physical fights and verbal arguments and bad vibes and all that. I mean, things have happened this year. There's something else I wanted to show you that I don't want to forget, and it's this. Okay, the Negreira thing. It says, what do you think about the Negreira case? For me, this is a red line. In 2024, at the Assembly of Delegate Members, it was stated that a strong Barça was needed. We've already explained, and we mentioned it in yesterday's video, that Florentino never said that. Florentino's exact words in response to a question from a delegate member, were, Barça and Real Madrid have to help each other. Help, what do you want me to say? Barça and Real Madrid, we have to help each other. What do you want me to say? That's what Florentino said, and I think it's just as bad. Someone commented earlier that what Florentino said is even worse than saying that a strong Barça is needed. I don't know if it's worse or better. It's bad either way. Bad in any case. They should advise Riquelme better and tell him Florentino never said that about Barça. He should be precise about that because you have to be precise. Club members are going to need the candidate to be precise in what he says. Florentino, to me, that's just as bad. Many people think Florentino said that, but it was actually me. In a collaboration with Edu Bagnon, Miguel Serrano told me that Florentino never said it. And I went to actually see what he said at the assembly, and the phrase he supposedly said just isn't there. The thing is, Enrique Riquelme continues saying that by then the Negreira case was already known when Florentino had said that thing about a strong Barça, or that Barça and Madrid had to help each other. He's right, by then the Negreira case was known, but we've already discussed it on the channel. Florentino wanted to tell us, I'm going to tell you, that lie about how he was so outraged when the Barça thing came out, the Negreira thing, while he was getting into bed with Laporta over the Super League issue. And he adds, so there were interests in making sure nothing happened with the Negreira case, and once Barça stopped being a Super League partner, that's when the Negreira case started to matter. Probably the reason nothing at all happened to Barcelona with the Negreira case is because we didn't start from the beginning with a proper response to it. If we had, the result would be different. I understand where you're coming from, but it's not exactly like that. I mean, Madrid got involved in the case as a prosecuting party. Madrid has participated, maybe not 100%, but they have. You can't say Madrid did nothing, just that they could have done more, of course. But I insist, we have to speak precisely. It's not that Madrid hasn't done anything. I think we need to be accurate when we talk about this. Well, but anyway, that's something someone should tell Enrique Marquez and his advisors. It's to tell him, hey, let's be just as forceful here, but let's talk about the things that have actually happened. But anyway, the point is they probably also advised him that he needs to be a bit more aggressive, right? And basically, this is what he said. Let's talk about the transformation plan. Let's talk about the transformation plan, because this morning he said outside his headquarters, I'll get to the Rubiales thing in a moment. By the way. Then he also spoke to the media at an event and said he wants a debate now with Florentino, who threw down the gauntlet and he's picking it up. Okay, elections. Do you want those of us who are going to run to talk? Okay, debate. I am absolutely in favor of a debate. Absolutely in favor. This morning, the message, that literal one, we're going to do it. We're going to announce it on Wednesday, which he also mentioned earlier in the interview with ABC. Until Wednesday. The members' issue starting Wednesday, Sports Matters. Of course, he has to break his campaign into stages, and he's doing it right. Is it reasonable? What's going to happen on Wednesday? I see a lot of people confused. I know something, but I can't say it, especially just in case I'm wrong. But I can tell you that it's something that has never been done before for a Real Madrid member. It's going to be surprising. Honestly, I think with this, the member would really feel something that truly benefits them, beyond what this man has been repeating these last few days. The 15% discount on jerseys, the Christmas and birthday greetings. I mean, here what the member would see is something tangible that when it's presented to him, he'll say, damn, I feel special for being a Real Madrid member. Which is something that Florentino Perez could easily have done, and I don't rule out that he might do it in the future. Maybe. He even gives Florentino Perez an idea in that sense, and Mr. Florentino doesn't need any ideas. He's already had plenty of brilliant ones. But by doing this, from what I think I know it is, he is filling a gap that I think this Real Madrid board hasn't filled. I think he is doing or would be doing something that this Real Madrid board hasn't done. And he would be giving the members a tangible treat, something concrete, like, wow, this is something we members are going to have, damn, which is the only way this man can appeal to the voting members. In the end, it's about the members and pleasing them with something, because it's great that Real Madrid's fan base is global, millions of followers and all that, but the ones who vote, for better or worse, are the members, and those are the ones he wants to address. And this is something tangible that that you'll be able to touch. But well, we'll talk about it on Wednesday, and I can't give more details. And let's see it today. Rubiales, because this is something, well, it's not surprising, but the fact that Rubiales said it on this account called Ingenious Podcast. Did Luis Rubiales speak there and say this regarding Tebas and Florentino?
And that they generate that current of opinion. But I think that when faced with opinions or misinformation, what we have to do is shed light with facts. That is, where there is darkness, you have to turn on the light. And it must be said clearly that Javier Tebas decided, with the money from the La Liga clubs, to dedicate tens of millions a year. That go to the newspapers, that go to the media, that even go to create media outlets. Is what Florentino said about that true?
It's exactly like that. With Relevo, it's exactly like that. And look, this man, the situation I had with him, and I mean, I'm not at all likely to agree with him on anything just because, but it's exactly like that. We've seen it. It just doesn't stop. We keep saying that these media outlets, Marca, Diario AS, with the Negreira issue, have whitewashed, have covered up, haven't given a single exclusive. They've been very lukewarm, because they were getting a lot of money from the league, and the league and Javier Tebas aren't interested in letting Barca fall. They're not going to let Barca fall. And here Rubiales is telling the truth, which is something Florentino pointed out the other day. What happens is that, in my opinion, he did it in a certain way during a press conference. Many times, even if your message is correct, it gets lost because of the way you say it and how disjointed your argument is. And well, for 1,000 other reasons. But Florentino was right. But it's nothing new that's just been discovered now. We've been saying it on this channel and others for a long time.
So, what happens is that there are people who give in, lower their heads, move forward, or even, well, another president of the federation, maybe in my place. Instead of dedicating football money to football, especially to the lower leagues, to women's football, to youth development.
Well, he also pushes that line about
grassroots football, right? If he had dedicated it to the media, they probably would have praised him. But anyway.
But let's see, this one neither. I mean, look, Rubiales. After what you did with Lopetegui, was it because there were media outlets that spoke well of you? Often it's because they dislike Madrid and Florentino, right? But not to the level of Tebas. But we're not naive, man.
People in football know the truth, and people who don't know the truth these days just don't want to know it because they look the other way. But Javier Tebas spends tens of millions on the media, and those media outlets generally lie or manipulate. Or is it always that what A does is fantastic and what B does is horrible? And in that, well, Florentino is absolutely right. I've called it out in my book and said it many times.
Well, yes, that's the contribution of Rubiales, who is now doing another tour, in this case on this podcast, which I want to mention correctly because, well, we've taken the liberty of showing these images. It's called Ingenious Podcast. I think that's where the full interview with Rubiales is. Well, that's it for now, guys. Hope everything goes well for you. Give it a like if you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to the channel, comment, share, and that's all until Florentino speaks. We'd be delighted, of course, because we're here to inform. During the campaign for the presidency of Real Madrid, we'll share whatever the current president says. And he's still the president of Real Madrid. Of course. All right. See you in the next one. Bye.